When I look back at my life, I can still remember the days when I used to wake up with no real plan, no direction, and no energy to fight for something better. Every morning felt the same. I would open my eyes, stare at the ceiling, and feel a heavy weight pressing on my chest, the weight of unfulfilled dreams. I had goals, yes, but they were like clouds in the sky, visible yet too far to touch. I wanted to speak fluent English, to build confidence, to make something meaningful out of my life, but every time I tried, I gave up too soon. I used to say, "I'll start tomorrow," but tomorrow never came. I was living in a loop of excuses, a circle that never moved forward. I thought maybe success was just not meant for me. I saw people achieving things, speaking confidently, creating something of their own, and I wondered, what's wrong with me? I had the desire, but I didn't have the discipline. I wanted results without effort, speed without patience, and glory without growth. And that was my biggest mistake. In those days, I was surrounded by distractions. My phone was my world. I scrolled through social media, watching motivational videos for hours, feeling inspired for a few minutes, but then doing nothing about it. I told myself that watching success stories was the same as living one. But I was wrong. The truth is, I was trapped in comfort, the kind that looks harmless but slowly kills your dreams. Every night I went to bed promising to change, but every morning I woke up the same. I blamed time, I blamed luck, I blamed people, but never myself. And that's when I realized something. I had become my own obstacle. No one was stopping me. I was stopping myself. I wanted to grow, but didn't want to move. I wanted success, but didn't want to sweat. I wanted to learn English, but didn't want to practice every day. I thought talent was everything. I believed that only gifted people could achieve great things. I didn't know that the real gift was consistency, the quiet habit of showing up every single day, even when no one claps for you. One night changed everything. I remember sitting alone in my small room, the light of my phone screen reflecting on my face. I came across a quote that hit me like lightning. Success doesn't come from what you do occasionally. It comes from what you do consistently. I read it again and again. It was such a simple line, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. I realized that my failures weren't because I wasn't capable. They were because I wasn't consistent. I would start something with excitement, and as soon as it got hard or boring, I'd stop. I never gave myself a chance to see results. I expected transformation overnight, and when it didn't happen, I gave up. That night, I made a promise to myself. Not a big promise, but a small, honest one. I will show up every day, no matter what. I didn't care if progress was slow. I didn't care if nobody noticed. I just decided that I would not stop. I started with small steps. 10 minutes of reading English, 15 minutes of writing, a short conversation practice. I didn't wait for motivation. I built discipline, and slowly I began to feel something change inside me. In the beginning, it wasn't easy. My old habits tried to pull me back. Some days I felt tired, lazy, or uninspired. I wanted to skip a day, but then I remembered my promise. I told myself, if I can stay consistent today, I will win tomorrow. And that thought kept me moving. I learned to fall in love with the process, not just the result. I began to track my small wins. One day, I understood a difficult English phrase without translation. Another day, I spoke a full sentence confidently. Another day, I noticed my pronunciation improving. They were small victories, but they meant everything to me. Each small success gave me energy for the next one. Slowly, my consistency became my identity. People around me started noticing the difference. They asked, "What changed in you?" And I smiled because I knew. It wasn't luck, it was consistency. It wasn't talent, it was time. It wasn't magic, it was daily effort, but the real battle was still inside me. I had to fight my own doubts every day. Sometimes I looked in the mirror and thought, "You're not enough." But then I reminded myself of how far I had come. Consistency taught me something no book ever could, that growth is invisible until it becomes unstoppable. You don't notice it day by day, but one morning you wake up and realize you've become someone new. That's what happened to me. I was no longer the person who made excuses. I was no longer waiting for motivation. I had learned to move even when I didn't feel like it. And that's when life started to change in ways I never expected. My English improved, my confidence grew, and more than anything, I started to believe in myself again. That was the moment I truly understood. The power of consistency is not in what it gives you, but in what it makes you become. The days after that promise were not bright or easy. They were quiet and heavy, like walking through fog. No one around me celebrated my decision to be consistent. There was no applause, no sudden success. The world looked the same, but something invisible inside me had changed. Every morning I reminded myself, show up. Sometimes I studied before sunrise, my eyes half closed but my mind determined. Sometimes I read English articles on the bus, whispering new words under my breath while people stared. I didn't care. I knew that small actions, repeated daily, would build something strong. Still, there were mornings when doubt visited me like an old friend. "Why are you doing this?" it whispered. "You're not improving fast enough." And sometimes I almost listened. But then I remembered the person I used to be, the one who quit too soon, and I refused to go back. Consistency was teaching me the truth about growth. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't happen in a single moment. It grows silently like a seed under the ground. I learned to trust the process. Each repetition of a word, each page I read, each podcast I listened to became a brick in the wall of my progress. I stopped comparing myself to others. I realized that comparison kills joy, while consistency builds it. Instead of asking, "How far have they gone?" I began to ask, "How far have I come?" And slowly, I noticed the answer changing. I could understand more English without translating. I started thinking in English, dreaming in English, even arguing in English. The language that once felt like a mountain now felt like a path. A long one, but one I could walk with strength. Yet, consistency is not just about doing things. It's about becoming someone. Every time I resisted the urge to quit, I felt stronger. Every time I practiced when I didn't feel like it, I built character. I realized that success doesn't test your intelligence first. It tests your patience. There were days when my friends went out, laughing and having fun, while I stayed home to finish my daily goal. It hurt sometimes. I felt left out, but I also felt proud. Because deep down, I knew that every sacrifice today was planting a seed for tomorrow. When I failed a test, I didn't break down like before. I said to myself, "It's okay, you're still on the road." When people doubted me, I smiled. I had learned to measure my progress not by how others saw me, but by how I faced each day. Then came a turning point. One day, I was invited to speak in front of a small group at an English club. The old me would have said no immediately. But this time, I said yes, even though my hands were shaking and my voice trembled. When I stood there, looking at the faces waiting for me to speak, I felt fear crawl up my spine. But I remembered my mantra, show up. I began to speak slowly, choosing each word carefully. At first, my heart raced, but then something magical happened. I started to enjoy it. I realized I wasn't just speaking English. I was expressing myself. I wasn't just communicating. I was connecting. When I finished, the audience clapped. It wasn't a thunderous applause, but it was real. That small moment became a symbol of how far consistency had carried me. From silence to speech, from fear to confidence. After that day, I set bigger goals. I began teaching others what I had learned, not because I was perfect, but because I wanted to share the truth about small daily effort. I told my students, consistency is stronger than talent. Some believed me, some didn't, but I kept teaching, kept showing up. I noticed that life started giving back what I had given it. Opportunities began to appear. A friend recommended me for a part-time teaching job. Later, I was invited to record short English motivational audios. I didn't plan any of it. It all grew naturally out of steady work. That's the secret I discovered. The universe respects consistency. When you show up for your dreams start showing up for you. But even then, the journey wasn't smooth. There were new challenges: fatigue, pressure, self-doubt. The higher you climb, the stronger the wind becomes. I had to learn to balance ambition with peace. Some nights I lay awake wondering, will this ever be enough? And then I would remember how far I'd come from that lost version of myself. I realized that consistency had already given me the greatest reward. It had made me disciplined, patient, and resilient. I no longer feared failure. I respected it as part of the process. I understood now that every expert was once a beginner who refused to give up. That truth gave me power. I began to apply consistency not just to language learning, but to everything. My health, my relationships, my habits. I started exercising regularly, writing daily reflections, keeping promises to myself. I noticed something beautiful. When you are consistent in one area of life, it spills into others. My mind became calmer, my focus sharper, my spirit stronger. People started asking for my secret, and I told them the same thing every time. There's no secret, just consistency. Some laughed, thinking it was too simple. But simplicity is the hardest thing to practice. It takes courage to repeat the same small actions when no one sees your effort. But that's where transformation happens, in the quiet repetition of ordinary days. And so the journey continued. I began to see life as a long classroom. Each failure was a lesson, each success a test of humility, each day an opportunity to practice. I realized that consistency doesn't promise perfection. It promises progress. That understanding changed my heart. I stopped chasing quick wins and started building slow victories. I learned to appreciate the middle part of the story, the journey between the start and the success. Because that's where growth lives. It's in the days when you want to give up but don't. It's in the hours you practice when no one notices. It's in the quiet belief that every small step matters. And I kept walking, one consistent step at a time, toward a version of myself I had only dreamed of becoming. It took years, not weeks. But one morning, I woke up and realized that the life I was living was once only a dream. I looked around my room. The same four walls, the same window, the same sunlight pouring in. But everything felt different, because I was different. My heart was calm, my mind focused, and my purpose clear. The person who used to doubt himself had now become the person who inspired others. I didn't reach this point through magic, luck, or talent. I reached it through the quiet power of consistency. I thought back to all the mornings when I forced myself to wake up early, to all the nights when I studied when everyone else was sleeping. I remembered the times I felt like quitting but didn't. Every single effort, every repeated action had built the person I had become. It was never one big moment that changed everything. It was thousands of small moments stacked together like bricks, forming the foundation of success. I still remember the first time I was invited to give a motivational speech in front of hundreds of students. Standing backstage, I could hear the sound of people talking, laughing, waiting for the program to begin. My hands were trembling again, just like the first time I spoke at that small English club. But this time, the fear felt different. It wasn't the fear of failure. It was the energy of purpose. When my name was announced, I walked on stage slowly, looked at the crowd, and smiled. I began to speak, not from a script, but from my heart. I told them about the nights of doubt, the mornings of effort, the years of invisible growth. I told them that I wasn't special, just consistent. The more I spoke, the lighter I felt. My words flowed naturally, and I could see people nodding, smiling, and even wiping tears. When I finished, the applause didn't just fill the hall, it filled my soul. That moment wasn't about pride, it was about gratitude. Gratitude to the version of me who refused to give up. Gratitude to every failure that taught me patience. Gratitude to the power of consistency that had silently shaped my destiny. After that day, my life began to expand in ways I never expected. I started mentoring young learners, teaching English through stories, and helping others build their own habits. People began to call me a teacher, but I always said, I'm still a student of consistency, because I learned that learning never ends. It just changes form. I wrote my goals on paper, not as dreams, but as promises. I realized that success isn't a destination. It's a direction. It's not something you reach. It's something you live every day through your actions. I saw that consistency was not only about achieving goals, it was about becoming trustworthy to yourself. When you keep promises to yourself, you start believing in your own power again. You stop needing motivation from outside, because the fire begins to burn inside. That's when real transformation begins. When discipline replaces motivation and purpose replaces fear. But even after reaching that point, I never stopped practicing the basics. Every day, I still read something new in English. Every day, I still write a few lines, listen to a podcast, or learn a new phrase. Because consistency is not a chapter. It's the whole book. The moment you stop, your progress starts to fade. So I kept feeding the habit that had built my life. There were times when I felt tired, but I no longer called it struggle. I called it growth. I understood that the path of consistency is not about perfection, but persistence. The person who wins is not the one who never falls, but the one who never stops getting up. That realization gave me peace. I didn't need to rush anymore. I didn't need to prove anything. I just needed to keep moving, one steady step at a time. Today, when I meet people who say, "I can't do it," I look them in the eye and say, "Yes, you can. Just don't stop." I share my story not to impress anyone, but to remind them that change is possible for anyone willing to be patient. I tell them that consistency is like water, soft, quiet, but strong enough to cut through stone. It may take time, but it never fails. I have seen students transform their English, their confidence, and their lives simply by staying consistent. Some took months, some took years, but they all arrived. And that's the beauty of it. Consistency equalizes everyone. You don't have to be the smartest, richest, or fastest. You just have to keep going. Looking back, I can see that my real success wasn't in the certificates I earned, the recognition I received, or the people who applauded. My real success was waking up each day with purpose, doing the work even when no one watched, and keeping faith alive even when the results were invisible. Consistency taught me the greatest lesson of all, that small steps done daily are stronger than big steps done occasionally. It taught me that progress is a rhythm, not a race. It taught me that the journey itself is the destination. Now, when I stand in front of a new learner, a dreamer, or someone who feels lost like I once did, I tell them this: don't chase perfection. Chase progress. Don't wait for the right moment. Make the moment right. Don't worry about speed. Focus on direction. And above all, be consistent. Because the power of consistency doesn't just change your skills, it changes your soul. It turns confusion into clarity, fear into faith, and hesitation into habit. I am living proof that if you stay consistent, everything else will follow. So this is my story. Not of talent, not of luck, but of time, effort, and faith. Every chapter of my life is written with the same pen called consistency. And now, as I close this part of my journey, I know one thing for sure. Life will always test your patience, but if you keep showing up, life will eventually reward you. Consistency is the bridge between dreams and reality, and once you cross it, you never go back.